Greetings and konnichiwa, and welcome to the Onyx Tavern. This is your host, the Barkeep, bringing you podcast 83 here at the Tavern, presented by HeroTaku.com. Well, ladies and gentlemen, for the first time in a long time, I am once again joined by my illustrious colleague, Raptor. Raptor, how you doing, bud?
Doing good. I've been getting settled in Carolina. Glad to be back on the tavern.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, Raptor has since graduated for college with honors, I might add.
Yeah.
uh, and has relocated to North Carolina for the time being. So, because of his schedule and my travel schedule, I have not been able to get a hold of him. But tonight, we finally got the bugs worked out and the technical issues. Our schedules are working, and now we're going to go ahead and bring you a very interesting topic tonight. Raptor, what are we going to be talking about?
Yeah, but before I reveal our topic tonight, I do want to say we are still working out some of the bugs in this system. There may be audio glitches either on my end or on Barkeep's end,
Yes,
so
thank
just be
you for
wary of
that.
those.
Yes, I appreciate you pointing that out. So, for those of you who are listening, if anything goes wrong, we apologize. Unfortunately, we are not as sophisticated as many other channels, but we do our best to bring you high quality, or at least
Yeah,
I think
we're
so.
we're trying to figure this out. We've been getting help from some of the other Hero Taku guys on this. So anyway, so tonight we are talking about Power Ranger video games.
Yes. Now, to be clear on a couple of issues right here, it is Power Ranger video games. So, unfortunately, we're not going to be touching any of the Sentai games because neither Raptor and I have had any exposure to those games other than, Let's Plays online.
Hmm.
Plus, we're going to be focusing on the Power Ranger games that are on console and handheld systems. So, nothing like the Power Ranger ISO games, Samurai Steel, or Legends, or anything like that. So, if you were able to buy it on a cartridge or a CD, whatever, and stuff, that's what we're going to be talking about.
Yep.
And, Raptor, let's go ahead and start all the way at the beginning. So, of course, Power Rangers came out in the days of Super Nintendo. So, of course, very first game that ever came out was Mighty Morphin Power Rangers for the Super Nintendo. Now,
Yeah.
as many viewers will remember, before the account was shut down, we did have a Let's Play of the first Power Ranger video game, where you and I were very frustrated on the level with Guy, if I can recall.
Yeah, and we're also having trouble with the Zord battle. But yeah, so for those of you who aren't familiar, the first Power Rangers game, simply titled Mighty Morphin Power Rangers for the Super Nintendo, was very typical of video games at the time. Side-scrolling brawler, jumped up and a little bit of platforming because you jump from a level to level. And what's interesting about that one compared to most Power Ranger games that followed, there are a few that didn't, but this one starred both the Rangers in their morphed and unmorphed forms.
Yes, you would start the game in your civilian form, beat up some putties along the way, and then by the time
About
you're
halfway through.
introduced, yeah, halfway through the level, you get introduced to the boss, you morph, fight more putties, go to the next stage, and then at the end you would fight the boss morphed. And of course, all five Power Rangers were in there. And actually, I remember that was a selling point of the game in the commercials was that you play as the Power Rangers in their human and morphed form, which, by the way, as far as I can tell, was not available in any of the Sentai games up to that point. You were just playing as the morphed forms of both Jetman and Zoo Ranger. So Power Rangers actually did something that the Sentai games did not do, and I'm not even sure how much they're actually doing that nowadays with those games.
See, well, I don't think in any recent Power Ranger games that there's been anything starring the unmorphed forms outside of cutscenes. Now,
Yeah,
I'm sure you remember this. The Mighty Morphin era was big on, you know, on marketing the, the unmorphed characters as much as the suited characters. I mean,
absolutely.
look at a lot of the toys. A lot of the toys featured, they were the ones that would where you could switch the heads from, Jason, you switch it to the Red Ranger helmet, things like that. And
Yeah,
oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm just gonna say, even the figures that did not morph, the just standard 8-inch karate chopping figures, it would say Jason the Red Ranger, Billy the Blue Ranger.
Mm-hmm.
That would be on the packaging. And what's even cooler is on the VHS releases, they would have pictures of the actors on both the front and the back of it. So it was just as much as marketing the human characters as it was the Rangers, and that obviously translated into video game form.
And something I will say about that, it it highlighted it made the Power Rangers, the morph form, seem cooler, because you you'll struggle a bit with the putties in the human forms, but when they morph, you plow right through those putties. So it really made the Rangers seem more powerful, like superheroes.
Now, I will say one of the drawbacks, and I believe we talked about this in the Let's Play, is that when you play as the Rangers, each sprite is unique, different, and the move set is different. But as soon as you morph, with the exception of your weapon, it's really just a palette swipe of the original Red Ranger costume. So that was kind of one drawback to it.
Especially when you were playing as Kimberly or Trini.
Very much so.
Now, one more thing before. Wasn't the game released at the same time as Season 2?
That is a very good question. I believe the game was released probably towards the tail end of the first season, maybe before Season 2. Now, there is an absence of the Green Ranger in the game. However, the Green Ranger did appear in the Sega Genesis versions of the Mighty Morphin Power Ranger game. So it would seem to me that it was released around Season 1, but I can't recall. And I'm sure you're looking it up right now to find out what the exact release date was.
I'm looking at the Sega one, because the Sega one, if I'm understanding correctly, did not. Okay, the Sega version did have green as playable. Now,
Yeah, now the difference between the two versions, because for those of you who are too young to remember, back in the day, you would have the cross-platform games, but they would be different versions of the game based on what console you had. Because at that time, Super Nintendo was 16-bit, and I believe that the Sega Genesis was 32-bit.
Mm-hmm.
So they had more leeway to do certain things. So for the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers game for the Sega Genesis, which I never played, but I've seen Let's Play footage, you would actually play a story where it would have cutscenes, and you would relive the green.
Mm-hmm.
Based on episodes. Like you would have the Green with Evil saga, the Doomsday saga, and all that. And you would actually fight Green Ranger. Yeah.
Yeah. So the first level was creation of the Power Rangers, so not a specific episode. And then Green with Evil saga, the Green Candle saga, the Crystal of Nightmares, and then Doomsday.
Yes, and what was really cool is you would fight the Green Ranger, and after you fight him, then he's added to your team. And another feature another feature I actually saw is that, so in the Power Rangers Super Nintendo version, you would only play as the Megazord versus Cyclopsis and Mutitus in the game. But for the Sega version, you would play as the Megazord, the Dragon Zord, and you would actually fight giant-sized monsters. So there was more variety.
Just the same as an episode.
Game. Yes, exactly. So it was games like that made me wish I had a Sega Genesis. But I will go ahead and say this. I think Super Nintendo games kind of stand the test of time a little bit more. In general, Super Nintendo games, but that's just my opinion there.
But you're right. Sega Genesis was a lot luckier on the licensed games, because when Jurassic Park, Sega Genesis Jurassic Park was the best of all of the games that came out for the movie.
Yeah, Angry Video Game Nerd definitely made that clear.
Yeah, and they also got the uncensored Mortal Kombat, unlike the sweaty version on the Super Nintendo.
Yes. Now, I'm going to go ahead and skip forward on to the games here. Now, yes, there was a Game Boy version of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, but frankly, that was a little unremarkable. Not much to really say about that. But the next thing we got was Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie. Now, once again, there's a difference in the consoles. If you played the Sega Genesis version, you would of course play all the Rangers, but you would actually go through the plot of the movie with a couple of side stories in there. And in particular, you would play as the Thunder Megazord, the Tiger Zord, the Falcon Zord, and the Ninja Megazord, depending on where you are in the story. Whereas the Super Nintendo game, you play as all six Rangers, but you didn't actually follow any plot, as far as I can tell. There's a scene where you're going down a mountainside snowboarding and end up on the river fighting Skellerina, and then there's no one where you're commandeering a battleship and breaking inside of that to fight Cannon Top. And then at the beginning of the game, you are on top of a blimp fighting the Mirror Maniac.
So it sounds more. Now, are those, refresh my memory? Were those season 2 or season 3 monsters?
Those are all season 2 Die Ranger monsters. Yeah.
So basically, it sounds like the Super Nintendo version was a game that should have just been attached to the show because it used season 2 monsters.
Yes, and actually, the only connection it even has with the movie is that the boss you fight at the end is Ivan Ooze. And it's not even a Zord battle that you fight. You fight him,
battle?
and then yeah, it's a ground battle, and then after you fight him, you have to escape via Metroid Prime, or not Metroid Prime, Super Metroid, and then you are rescued at the last minute by the Thunder Megazord, which its hand picks you up and saves you. That's the limit to how the Zords are in the game. And you don't even fight the Oozemen. The Oozemen are in the Genesis version, but you have the...
Yeah, because the Genesis version followed the film.
Exactly, but only putties show up in the Super Nintendo version.
So I'm assuming that the Super Nintendo version had White Ranger playable instead of Green?
Yes, he did. Mm-hmm.
So
yes, he did.
Super Nintendo players never had a chance to control the Green Ranger.
Absolutely. Yep.
Wow, that's a bit disappointing if you think about it.
Yeah, it very much is. I mean, at the time, I didn't know that there was a difference in the movie game. I mean, because again, I know the only friends I had was Mortal Kombat and Sonic. That's all they ever played, so they weren't in the Power Rangers. But knowing what we know now, and actually, one thing that both games innovated on from the previous title is it was now two-player action. Because in the first game it was just one player, now it's two players. So me and my brother, I was always Tommy, he was always Rocky, and it was always fun to do that.
And you know that is more true to the spirit of the show. The Power Rangers are a team; they're not solo heroes. So,
well, it makes me wonder why we didn't have an arcade game, because the X-Men arcade game had up to 6 players. That would have been a great arcade game for 6 people playing Power Rangers. Yeah.
And that is a bit strange that Power Rangers never had an arcade game because it was certainly big enough. There were shows that were much smaller than Power Rangers getting arcade games.
But it would have to do, I think, with the Bandai tie-in, because Bandai, at this point in Power Rangers history, was making all the video games, and frankly, they were pretty good at it.
Yeah, I would say they were good at the time.
Yeah.
So, and since we're talking about these games based on the films, that brings us next to Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the Fighting Edition.
Hands down, the best Power Ranger game of all time. That is my honest to God opinion on the whole thing. I loved that game.
Please start.
It's a standard fighting game. I think it was ripped off another game's engine, but I can't find real information on what that game is.
It was not. The Power Rangers didn't rip off the engine. The developers used the Power Rangers engine for another game later.
Oh, so I got mixed up then. Okay, so that's probably why I haven't been able to find anything. But you would play 8 characters in the game, technically 9. You'd control the Thunder Megazord, the Mega Tiger Zord, Shogun Megazord, Ninja Megazord, Lord Zed, Goldar, Silverhorns, Lipstickna, and if you knew how to put in the right code, you could play as Ivan Ooze. Yes. It was so much fun. And I tell you, one thing it had games like Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter did not have is you could actually make the computer fight against the computer. So you could actually watch them fight, and for some reason that was always fun because the game knows the moves better than you do.
All right. Well, I'm looking at this roster here. I do say I'm looking at this, and you can probably guess the disappointment that I'm feeling with it.
Well, there is only one female character, and that female character is evil.
No, I was going to say lack of season 1 Zords.
Yes. Now this again, it was coming out around the time of the movie. I don't know what its release date was, coinciding with the Power Rangers movie game. But again, Lord Zed was in the game, which was actually a surprise because he's not featured on the cover.
Yes, he is.
And
I'm looking at the
not,
cover. The Well, at least on the Wikipedia page, the cover is. Oh, good.
Well, I'm saying like you did not know Ivan Ooze was in the
Oh,
game.
Ooze. Okay, I thought you were talking about Zed. Okay.
No, yeah, Zed's on the cover getting
punched
his
in the
face
face
by the Thunder Megazord, yeah. But yeah, nobody knew Ivan Ooze was in the game until you defeated Lord Zed, and his entrance was awesome because there's no fatalities in the game. When you beat them, there's a cut scene where you see Goldar and Silverhorns explode, but with Lord Zed, his body just lays on the ground, then is struck and blown up by lightning, and then Ivan Ooze descends into the game. It was awesome.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah.
The only thing is that they never ever made a sequel to this game, and I'm just like, it was so disappointing. I wanted another one. I wanted more fighters. I wanted more action, more places to go, and all that. And they never delivered on that.
Yeah, you think that at some point, and I'm sure someone in Bandai had this idea at some point. Another Power Rangers fighting game, but it's involving the Rangers instead of the mecha.
I mean, I prefer the mecha at that point in Power Rangers history. Nowadays, yes, I would say a Ranger versus Ranger fighting game, but at the time, I think the mecha was the best way to go.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. So, yeah, that's a pretty bold claim, especially considering a certain game that we're going to talk about later in this podcast. So,
okay. Now, there is one more game for the Super Nintendo that I think is worth mentioning, and that is Power Rangers Zeo Battle Racers. Raptor, did you ever play that game?
I didn't. So yeah, now we have left the Mighty Morphin era, and we're getting into
to the Zeo era, and it was really consistent when you think about it between 93 and 96 with them coming out with Power Ranger games almost one a year, I would say. Now, simply, Power Rangers Zeo Battle Racers is a kind of a clone of Mario Kart. Now, I never played Mario Kart on the Super Nintendo. Don't know why I never did. But I played Zeo Battle Racers, and you take the 6 Zeo Rangers, including the Gold Ranger, and then the 2 other racers were a Cog and a Quadrifighter, and King Mondo on this weird Hell's Angels bike or something like that.
That sounds really awesome.
Yes, and it's your standard racing game, but the thing was, it was simple, it was fun. You had limited weapons, and each ranger raced differently. The Red Ranger and the Gold Ranger, they always had motorcycles. The Green Ranger and Pink Ranger had Green Ranger and Yellow Ranger had go-karts, and the Blue and Pink Rangers had hovercrafts. And of course, each one had strengths and weaknesses. I think it was the red and gold were like the fastest, but they couldn't turn worth the damn. So, it was just a lot of fun. They had the battle thing, just like in Mario Kart, where you can battle against each other, unlock different tracks and stuff. It was just a lot of fun. So,
okay. Wikipedia is saying that Blue and Pink had acceleration, but low speed. Okay.
Yeah, I never played as those as they were too darn slow. I was always playing Tommy because, well, of course, it was Tommy.
Yeah, looking at these, it sounds like, it's pretty wholesale rip-off of Mario Kart, because that's the Mario Kart classes right there, the high acceleration, low top speed.
Now, sometimes me and my brother would play as the Cog and the Quadrifighter because each character had a blasting mechanic and you can only get 3 shots, but the Quadrifighter had unlimited ammo. So you could basically just race and shoot everybody in front of you.
Game breaker.
Yeah, but it wasn't like a lock-on feature as I recall. So you had to kind of had good aim, kind of get right up on them to shoot them. So I think Raptor, since you don't have much to go
Yeah,
ahead and say
please,
about
directly
this,
at this point, yeah.
yeah. So that was the Super Nintendo era. Now, following that, after Zeo, that was the last game they released, and then the company was sold, or excuse me, the rights for Power Ranger games were given to THQ, who most notably did WWE games, all those wrestling games from the early days. And basically, between Zeo and Lightspeed Rescue, we didn't get anything in terms of video games. But when they came out when THQ, they did a bunch of games. They did one for the Super Nintendo, which was the Lightspeed Rescue game, and they did a bunch of handheld games for the Game Boy Color and the Game Boy Advance. But that was kind of one of those yearly releases, typical side scroller. Now, I've never really played those games. Raptor, did you get a chance to play any of those?
All right, so I did play the Game Boy Color version of the Lightspeed Rescue game.
And what would you have to say about that game?
Well, all right. One thing I will say, it it really, you can tell by playing it that it was trying. It was trying to be as faithful as a Game Boy Color game could be to Lightspeed Rescue's theme, because it
Okay.
wasn't just going around and beating up monsters. You actually went around and you found people that were hurt and you healed them, and you had you had different power ups. Some power ups were for healing people, other power ups were for putting out fires. And so a good chunk of the level would be based on that. You'd be looking for people to help or fires put out. You'd have to fight a monster every now and then you'd fight the main monster of the level. And then after you beat it on foot, Zord battle. I mean,
Well,
oh, go ahead.
oh, I was just curious. What's the availability of Zords? What Zords did you get?
It, um, I think it was only the main, right?
The Lightspeed
Yeah,
Megazord,
yeah.
which, as I recall, we both listed as one of the worst Megazords of all time.
And yet, I don't know if you did, but I listed the Super Train Megazord as one of the best.
Yeah, which if you go and play as that, that would kind of make up for the whole experience, wouldn't it?
Yeah, blow everything away with that thing. Okay, so I'm looking at the Wikipedia page. It it had all five Rangers plus Titanium Ranger. However,
Okay.
if anyone decides to go play this, interesting thing is that this was during the era of passwords for video game level progression.
Hmm.
Because apparently THQ wasn't going to bother with um, save batteries.
Yeah, I never got in past the Game Boy Color. I didn't get into the Advance or anything beyond that. And frankly, the only game I was playing at that time was probably no, Tetris and Pokemon. That was about it. So the thing about the THQ is that it just didn't seem like their games were interesting. They came out with the N64 version of Lightspeed Rescue, and its only selling point that I can recall was that it was using the voices of the actors from the television
Voices
show.
and likenesses as well.
Yeah, and again, I never got a chance to play that game, but I never heard anything good about it.
Really, the Power Rangers games after after the Super Nintendo and Genesis era, Power Rangers games tended to just kind of blur into obscurity, other than one major exception.
Yes, and we'll get to that. I just want to kind of like on one
Right,
last
right.
note while we're here. Is that there was just nothing remarkable about them, and the thing was, for as big a Power Ranger fan as I was and am, I would still go to the store and I'm like, "What the heck is this? I never heard this was out." Then I would look at the box, I'm like, "Ugh, this."
Doesn't look like worth playing.
It,
Exactly.
it doesn't, yeah, it doesn't look worth playing. But to segue into our next topic, um, Now, the next game was worth playing in my mind, worth playing so much that I went out and bought myself a PlayStation 2 to play it. And of course, again, we're skipping ahead right here just because, again, Raptor and I don't have much to say about the other
We should,
games in between.
although we should mention it. So after Lightspeed Rescue, there wasn't another Rangers game until Ninja Storm,
Okay.
and Ninja Storm was I'm only able
No,
to.
there was a Wild Force and Time Force, but again, there was just like on the Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color. So
Okay, Wikipedia didn't have. That's how notable they are. Wikipedia doesn't have pages for them.
yeah. But go ahead with the Ninja Storm, and then we can talk about the big game on this list.
Yeah, Ninja Storm was a Game Boy Advance game. Starred all six Rangers. Um, Megazord levels featured QuickTime events. You had to press buttons in time to beat the monster. So,
See, that doesn't even sound like fun.
hey, that's doing QuickTime events several years before God of War popularized it
But the thing is,
on the
God
Game
of
Boy
War,
Advance, of all
but
things.
but God of War, and by extension, Dante's Inferno made QuickTime events fun, depending on where you are in the game, of course.
Yeah. So, yeah, moving on from Ninja Storm. Did you ever play the? I'm kind of slapping myself for not buying this, but I was in a game store the other day and I saw the GameCube game for Power Rangers Dino Thunder. You ever play that?
Oh, I completely forgot about it. Yes, I did go ahead and play it. What here's what I never understood, and this is going to be in reference to another game that's on this list here. First of all, it had interesting cutscenes. At the
I
beginning, it
watched a
was like
few
fully
Let's Plays
rendered.
of that, yeah.
Yeah, and then they didn't have any of the voices of the characters at all. Nobody was demorphed; they stay in their morph form. But you play the entire game as the Zords. So you would start out the game as the Tyrannosaur, the
So
Tricerazord, the
no
Pterosaur.
Rangers, no Ranger levels.
No Rangers. You would just play as the Zords, which you could switch out during, depending on what ability that you needed. So my favorite was actually playing as the Triceratops because it would have its head. You press the B button, it would shake its head, and any projectile it would deflect
Deflect?
back,
Okay.
basically. Yeah. And then the
Triceratops
Pterosaur.
shield makes sense.
Yeah, the Pterosaur could fly, of course, and shoot lasers. And then as you go along, you unlock Pterosaurs like the Dimetrodon and the others whose dinosaur names are very hard that I can't remember to pronounce. What was also interesting is you would get like bonus levels that you can go ahead and play, and if you accomplish certain goals, you can unlock the Ninja Storm Zords as well as some Wild Zords.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yes, which I was never skilled enough to do. Unfortunately, I was never skilled enough to get. I got the Hawk Zord and I got the Lion Zord from Ninja Storm, but I never ended up getting a Wild Zord. But I have seen pictures, and it is promised in the game. So I just it was like flying through rings and timed events, and it was like Superman 64 all over again.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah.
That's interesting because a lot of the Disney stuff, whether it be games or the show or otherwise, didn't acknowledge Saban era stuff outside of Mighty Morphin.
Yes, and the thing is, here's the interesting thing. They never referred to him as Tommy in the game, just Dr. O. So I almost wonder if that fits into not referencing previous generations because he's Dr. O in Dino Thunder. He's Tommy in other Power Rangers. I don't know. I'm stretching.
That is weird that they because you'd think that they might just want to try to market it to the lapsed fans a bit just so they could say, hey, Tommy.
And actually, that's what I want to talk about. I want to actually move on to our next game on the list here because I think you and I have a lot to say about
Yes,
this
yes,
next one here.
yes.
And that is the 15th anniversary game, Power Rangers Super Legends, which was advertised as a 15th anniversary game. It said so on the box, basically. Now the plot of that game basically is Lord Zed has returned and is trying to destroy the Power Rangers throughout time. So a Power Ranger from the far future, known as the Omega Ranger, no relation to the SPD character, rounds up Rangers from different time periods to fight against monsters of their time period and to fight against Lord Zed in the end. Now, Raptor, I want you to give me kind of your impressions before I go on kind of my rant of what is wrong with
Oh,
this game, because
looking forward to that.
I bought the PS2 for the sole purpose of playing this game, and then when I got it, I was excited for a little bit, and then I was severely disappointed. But you tell me your impressions of it.
Okay. So I haven't played it, but I've watched Let's Plays because I was genuinely interested in learning about it. I thought it looked great. I thought that the graphics looked nice. I thought that there was some good work that went into, capturing the Rangers of different eras, but also giving good, giving good spotlight to the villains of different eras and the places of different eras. I watched a level where, um, where with the Lost Galaxy Rangers, it had them fighting Stingwingers and um,
Yes, because it actually did incorporate American villains and foot and stuff
well,
in there. Like there's
it wasn't based on it wasn't based on a Sentai game. It was completely
Yeah, it
original.
wasn't based on. Yeah, it was not based on a Sentai game, but used like again Lord Zed. But not only that, but one of the levels was Terror Venture. You did fight Stingers. You did fight Trachina. So there was a lot of American stuff in there that would exclusively be for the American audience. And definitely, I think the Trachina stuff was definitely kind of a almost a fan service kind of thing.
Yeah, but please, I can tell you've got something seething in that you're ready to let out. So please
Okay,
bring it.
First, first of all, like the Dino Thunder game, even though it's a 15th anniversary, they did not bother to get any original actor to play the voices of any of the characters. Didn't get Amy Jo, didn't get Austin St. John to play Jason Kimberly. They didn't get Axelrod to voice Lord Zed.
Ooh,
They didn't get anybody to voice any of the characters. So you listen to them and you're like, who are these people talking? Even when they had Will and Mac from Operation Overdrive, who they were filming at the time, they didn't bother to get their voices. Of the times you do want to get the Power Ranger character voices, this would be the time to go ahead and do it. Um, and okay, the levels are fine. They were platformers. You find blocks like in Donkey Kong Country to spell power, and you get all this other stuff. Like if you collect enough stuff, you unlock different rangers because you get two rangers for each level depending on the era. Operation Overdrive, you get black and red. Lost Galaxy, you get red and green. Just kind of random Power Ranger matchups, but you play it enough, you unlock everything. Then you get Yellow Ranger, Blue Ranger, Black Ranger, all the Mighty Morphins. I do not recall if Green Ranger or White Ranger were in the game. But Time Force, Wild Force, SPD, all those guys were hidden and unlocked. Even Shadow Ranger was in there. But it was a very limited roster when you kind of think about it. But of course, they kind of like balanced it out with like one's faster, one's stronger, and all that. But the thing that was extremely disappointing in the game is the Zord battles. They pretty much were quick time events.
mm,
So you play as the original Megazord, which was awesome against Goldar, I recall. But it's kind of like in just Injustice where you do the clash and you have to like pick a
yeah,
button and
yeah.
stuff. It was kind of like that. They would clash. You have to rotate the pad or press A really quick or something. It wasn't. You couldn't fully control the Zords. It was quick time events for the Megazords, and that was it was just boring. It wasn't any fun to do that. I don't know. I mean, it was just really upsetting that you have the concept even before Gokaiger had, to be quite honest, to team up all the past generations, but you're still limiting yourself in what you're doing. And let me take that back. Okay, they did do the past generations in Sentai World, but what I'm saying is like in a video game
Right,
format
right.
where you travel through time and pick and choose and all that. So
It's
yeah.
and it's worth noting that this is the only game that attempted that.
And even the backstory was bogus too, because like Lord Zed is back, and the backstory was that his human form from
Became an
Countdown to Destruction
archaeologist.
became an archaeologist, found some artifact and touched and became evil again. And I'm like, what? What are we talking about now?
But I think it's thematically appropriate to have a Mighty Morphin villain do it, and besides, it's a good way to try and market it to lapsed fans. Look, Zed.
Yeah, and the cover featured Red Mighty
Yeah,
Morphin Power
red
Ranger.
right there on the cover.
Yeah, and then they had the other two Operation Overdrive Rangers on the cover as well. Um, somebody was trying some things, but
Now,
not really.
were
It's like, yeah.
were any teams not represented at all?
Oh, yeah. Because it was really just the five main generations. Now, Wild Force was represented, but have to unlock them through gameplay. It's just SPD, Operation Overdrive, Lost Galaxy, Mighty Morphin, and Ninja Storm. Everybody else, Time Force, Wild Force, they could be unlocked. And that was and some Ninja Storm characters could be unlocked as well. But yeah, you were kind of limited in who you were able to go ahead and play.
Hmm. Well, kind of disappointing, but from what it sounds like, it sounds like it was a budget title. I mean, how much was it at full price when you bought it new?
Oh, well, I'll tell you an interesting story about that. I bought it brand new for $20 at GameStop, and then in for my PS3 and my other games. I got like $20 for my Madden game that I traded in. I got 47 cents for this game.
So that game was $20 new.
$20 new for a
Okay.
PS2 game.
Okay, so yeah, it sounds like it was a budget title. So budget title, limited budget. So that probably explains why they didn't do anything with the trying to get original actors back. But it sounds like for what means they had, they tried.
I mean, maybe I'm jaded by time or something, but I was actually expecting a lot more from that game when it first came out. When I first heard about it, I was like, yeah, I'm expecting some good things from this, but I was severely disappointed.
Yeah, and speaking of disappointments, after Super Legends, there was not another Power Rangers video game until Samurai.
Yes. Now I have not played any of the new generation stuff. Because one, I don't own the consoles except for the Wii. But for the life of me, I can't find that game anywhere in any store. And I have not been able to play the Kinect version of Super Samurai. And of course, I've only recently attained a DS, so I've not been able to play the Mega Force or the Samurai game. Um, you've played them, I assume.
I haven't, but from what I've done, the research I've done on them is that none of them have been that well received. They've all got very low scores. Uh, the Samurai one on the Xbox got okay scores. It was praised for being friendly towards kids, okay use of the Kinect. The Wii one didn't get good scores. Now, the Mega Force game on 3DS got terrible scores.
Mm. I mean, it's obviously somebody's trying because they got to make a living, but I don't think they're trying hard enough. Because to me, Power Rangers is a format that is conducive to what Power Rangers is in the form of fighting games, in the form of RPGs. Heck, I was having the idea, why don't they make a Power Ranger Pokemon like game with the Zords or something? I'm talking about turn-based RPG kind of stuff because Power
I'll
Rangers
get to
has
that.
that
I'll get to
ability.
that. Mhm.
Yeah, Power Rangers has that ability, but for some reason people want Call of Duty and stuff instead of, again, Power Rangers. If only Power Rangers was owned by Lucasfilm and, then Lucasfilm would have done
Power
something
Rangers
with that.
Battlefront.
Hey, Power Rangers Galactic Battlegrounds. That would have been something.
Well, all right. So, I made the comment earlier about how Super Legends was not adapted from a Sentai game.
Yes.
Well, here's a fun fact for the listeners. The Megaforce game, not Super Megaforce, just Megaforce game on 3DS was adapted from a Kyoryuger game on 3DS. They switched out the character models. Took out the Kyoryuger suits, put in Ghost Sager / Megaforce suits, and then switched out enemies, to put in the enemies appropriate for Megaforce, but otherwise kept the same levels and engine. So, and that game, in the Kyoryuger game, didn't get good scores in Japan. So, I don't know what they were trying to accomplish there. Oh, of course I know what they were trying to accomplish. Quick buck.
Now, if I'm understanding this correctly, the upcoming title, the next Power Ranger video game coming out, is Power Rangers Super Mega Force. Now, is that based on the Gokaiger game?
No, it is an original game for 3DS.
Okay.
Because if 3DS wasn't that big yet when Gokaiger was airing, and this one is interesting because of course, the Super Mega Force Rangers are playable. It goes without saying. It'd be pretty hard to... Anyways. And additionally, the Mighty Morphin Rangers are playable. And of the other seasons, only the Red Rangers of every other season are playable.
Yeah, that's something I think you and I discussed when we first heard it, was that they were going to go ahead and have the ability to change into other Rangers via the key mechanic, but not every Ranger would be available. And I just found that curious because, you have the 20th anniversary, you can have any Ranger you want in there, yet you're going to kind of limit yourself to X number, finite number. And I don't necessarily believe it has anything to do with game space or anything, because heck, going back to Pokemon, you got Pokemon games with over 700 Pokemon in the game.
Pokemon probably has a much longer development time and a much higher development budget than Power Rangers.
And I understand that. I'm just saying that it is possible, but they've chosen not to do it. Is basically what I'm saying, because I don't think that they necessarily said we're going to get every character in here. They've made a conscious decision not to, and only put in, I guess, whatever would tie in. Because if I'm also correct on this, the camera on the DS is going to allow you to scan Ranger keys to get the new characters and so forth.
Mm-hmm. I think so. Yes.
Yeah. So
cool feature, by the way. Good way to tie the merchandise together.
Good is a relative term, and you know how I am about a Bandai of America. So
yeah, just look at your complete Ranger key collection.
In any case, in any case,
something I will say in the game's defense: if you think about it, they probably could have gotten away with not having any Legend Rangers playable. I'm sure kids probably wouldn't have complained that much if it would have been just the Super Mega Force Rangers, because a lot of kids, the youngest kids, they don't even know who these teams are. So I think they kind of threw us half a bone in making sure that every previous Red is playable. So there aren't any teams being left out.
What about Red Alien Ranger? Is he playable?
I would have to check that, although I do find it funny that question always has to come up, and when you did a podcast about the Alien Rangers, you made a great point.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's hating on the Alien Rangers, and they have not been playable in any video game, yet their Zords have been playable, because everybody loves the Shogun Zords and Ninja Zords.
Well, yeah.
And yes, I know technically the Battleborgs, but they are from Kaku Ranger footage, so that was the point I was making there. They love the Zords, just not the costumes for some reason.
Yeah,
Raptor, Yeah, Raptor, I think we can't kind of keep getting off topic right here,
Yeah.
whatever that topic may be. But our general discussion is about Power Ranger video games. And I think from what we've seen here is that the 16-bit and 32-bit eras, they were just a lot of fun because they were very simple games.
Hmm.
The problem with moving into the THQ realm is that they really didn't do much with the games because they had, of course, yearly releases and they were all side scrollers with very little innovation. The anniversary game that came out didn't really deliver on anything, and the games have been mediocre, subpar since moving into the Samurai and Megaforce eras. And I would venture to say we have not had a good, and I mean good, Power Ranger game since the Fighting Edition.
I completely agree with you. And I haven't played the Fighting Edition, so I can't say I can't say that if it counts as a truly good one. But I'll take your I trust your opinion on that. And and I'm just because I'm thinking back to the fact that yes, I legitimately enjoyed the very first Power Rangers video game when we were playing it on the Let's Play. It was simple, but it was effective. It made good use of its license. With a little bit more content, it sounds like it could have been great.
Yeah,
And
and
it,
definitely with the capabilities of even the 16-bit at the time, and of course the fact that they're re-releasing games all the time on the DS and the Nintendo eShop and all that, you would think that an updated version of that game or any of the Power Ranger games would become
like the
available.
updates to the Ninja Turtles games that have been released.
Not that the re-release of Turtles in
I
Time, that
know
one
it's
that got panned a little bit, and I can definitely understand why.
well, yeah, it's so. One thing I will say though, Power Rangers may not have delivered, but who knows? Eventually, maybe they could, but also fans might just have to look elsewhere. I may do something about this as its own podcast at some point, but there's an upcoming video game coming out called Chroma Squad. I did a review on this on the main Hero Taku website.
Yeah, and I would urge all of you all to go take a look at on
Oh,
HeroTalker.com.
yeah, we'll put a link to it in the comments. But it is a tactical strategy RPG, so such as Fire Emblem, Advanced Wars, Final Fantasy Tactics, where it stars your own Sentai Rangers team. You customize them, whatever colors you want, whatever weapons you want, whatever helmets you want. And it's your own team, and you take them through levels, which is something that has never been in a Power Rangers game. Your own team. Wouldn't you think that'd be a great Power Rangers game?
And I will promise that we will do a Chroma Key review analyst with Raptor here on this channel here in the near future.
When it's actually released. I played
Yeah.
beta.
Okay. But to your point, yes, I think that beyond the side scroller, I think an action RPG or just an RPG in general, similar to, like we said, Pokemon or other RPGs like I love Lord of the Rings The Third Age, something similar to those games, I think can be successful with Power Rangers, given that, frankly, every team starts off with one or two weapons and then they always upgrade, and there's always this escalation in RPGs. And I think Power Rangers is well suited for that. And the Chroma Key is a good start to that, where you get full customization because, frankly, everybody wants to make their own Power Ranger team. And I have the
Exactly.
horrible fan art to prove it from DeviantArt. But to give people that freedom is definitely something that I would like to see kind of moving forward with Power Rangers.
And heck, if Bandai Namco, whatever, wants to keep putting Power Rangers games on 3DS, 3DS would be great for that. Imagine using Spot Pass and Street Pass to swap teams between the different players' games.
My hope is that NetherRealm Studios will eventually acquire the rights to Power Ranger games. And then we will eventually have the Green Ranger as a guest character in Mortal Kombat 15.
Well, come on, we already know that White Ranger can beat Scorpion.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Okay, Raptor, I'm going to go ahead and call last call on this topic because I think we've gone over it very thoroughly. But what final thoughts do you want to address to our fans regarding Power Ranger video games in general?
I would say, yeah, we haven't had a really good game Power Rangers game in a while, and I think really, I think if you had the right dedicated team, you could get a good Power Rangers game, especially on the handheld, since they're not as expensive to create. So, yeah, I think it just needs to happen, and or you know what, maybe someone will make a game that's not officially affiliated with Power Rangers, something like Chroma Squad, but maybe a different game genre, maybe action RPG, like you said you would like, and then we'll get that Power Rangers game we wanted, just in a different package than what we expected.
And I think what I would end with is that we have barely scratched the surface of the video game market with Power Rangers. The more interactive, the more technologically advanced video games are becoming. I know, unlike movies, there's a lot more original content in video games, but people do still pick up on other franchises. Um, you
Depending
know,
on what side of the video game industry, but yes, for
oh,
the most part.
yeah, absolutely. For the most part, so there isn't much opportunity, I think, out there to, I guess, make the Power Ranger game that's on the same level as other franchises like Halo and Metroid and everything like that. But if we get a good developer that doesn't even have to like Power Rangers, but is enthusiastic about the project and wants to make something unique and special, that's what we need for Power Rangers to become a good, not even video game franchise, but just something
A good game
entertaining and quality.
doesn't have to be a full-on franchise.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It doesn't necessarily have to be. Again, just need that time and attention. And I'll give you one example before we go. Look at Injustice: Gods Among Us, but then look back to Justice League Task Force that came out in the mid '90s. A lot of people didn't like that game, and it took 20 years for them to get a good Superman, Batman, Justice League fighting game. That's yeah.
And what I would say is, look at Ninja Turtles. Ninja Turtles has had a lot of good video games over the years, and yet Ninja Turtles will get derided as kids stuff just as much as Power Rangers would.
Yeah. And of course, that's a discussion for another time. But I think we have spent enough time on this topic. Give our friends a break here. But Raptor, I want to thank you for joining me on this long distance Skype session. I know it's kind of a pain with both our schedules and everything.
Hey, I'm just glad to be back.
Absolutely. So we'll go ahead and get some more videos posted within the near future, however long that may take, of course. But Raptor, I want to thank you for joining me for having this discussion here tonight.
Yep, always glad to be back.
And I want to thank our fans for joining us. What do you guys think of Power Ranger video games? What's your favorite game? And what do you want to eventually see in Power Ranger games? Please leave that in the comments section below. Otherwise, I want to thank you guys for joining us. Raptor, again, thank you. Have a good evening. And the tavern is now closed.